Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. In the not-so-distant past, spending billions of dollars on a secret underground R&D lab was kind of the ultimate corporate flex.
Oh, absolutely. The whole, key card access only, frosted glass vibe.
Exactly. You picture this team of engineers working in just total isolation for years, right? Until they finally unveil this master invention to the world.
Like a magic trick.
Right. But today, that model is just a massive liability. So for you listening, today we are doing a deep dive into a really comprehensive roadmap for modern professionals. It's based on Felix Römer's SmartKeys article, Open Innovation Models, Collaborating Beyond Company Walls.
It's a fantastic piece.
It really is. And the mission today is to explore exactly why opening your gates to external partners is the new key to business efficiency. And frankly, why relying solely on your own internal talent pool is, it's basically a fast track to obsolescence.
Yeah, the math of traditional product development, it simply doesn't work anymore. If you look at the current business landscape, the pace of technological change it's accelerated far beyond the capacity of any single corporate laboratory.
It's just too fast now.
Way too fast. When you rely solely on your internal labs, you are effectively betting that your specific group of engineers can somehow out-innovate the rest of the globe combined.
Which is pretty arrogant, if you think about it.
Right. It's impossible. The market now demands that you expand your idea pipeline beyond your own company walls. You have to actively integrate external intelligence just to keep pace with these really rapid market shifts.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the concept of open innovation, it's fascinating. And it isn't actually some brand new Silicon Valley buzzword, right?
No, it's not at all.
The term was actually coined by Henry Chesbrough way back in 2003. But reading through Römer's article, the concept just feels so much more urgent now because the barriers to global communication have basically vanished.
Exactly. The infrastructure is finally there to support it.
Right. So to wrap my head around the core difference here, I was thinking about it like this. Closed innovation is sort of like trying to cook a world-class multi-course feast, but using only the ingredients that are currently sitting in your pantry.
I love that analogy.
Right. Because you might make something decent, sure, but you are strictly limited by what you already bought. If you suddenly need saffron, but you only have paprika...
You're out of luck.
Exactly. You either have to spend months trying to cultivate saffron in a dark closet, or you just serve a subpar dish. But open innovation, on the other hand, is like walking into a massive global farmer's market. You have access to every ingredient, every spice, every technique from vendors all over the world.
And the shift in focus there is really critical because in the pantry model, your primary challenge is resource constraint, right?
Yeah.
But on the farmer's market model, your challenge shifts from inventing the ingredients to curating and integrating them. And Römer's text details exactly why that pantry method just structurally fails today.
Let's get into the factual flaws of that, yeah.
So first, it inherently slows down development cycles. Right. Your speed is permanently bottlenecked by the specific capacity and the current expertise of your internal staff.
Right.
If they need to learn a whole new discipline like, say, machine learning, just to finish a product, you have to literally wait for them to learn it.
Which brings us to the second massive flaw, right? The financial burden. Because when you keep everything in-house, you are funding every single failure. Every dead-end prototype, every round of testing, it's all entirely on your own dime.
Yep. And that financial drain leads directly to the third and perhaps most dangerous flaw that the text mentions.
Which is?
The massive risk of producing technology that is already outdated by the time it actually ships.
Oh, wow.
Think about it. You spend 3 years in your isolated lab perfecting a product, paying for all the R&D yourself, right? And by the time you finally launch it, consumer expectations or the underlying technologies have completely moved on. You've basically built a perfect solution for a market that existed 36 months ago.
That is just a terrifying prospect for any executive. You pour millions into this black box, and out comes this beautifully polished antique.
Exactly.
So the alternative is this open model. But I want to make sure we and the listener really understand the mechanics here. Because it's one thing to say, hey, let's collaborate, and it's another to actually execute it.
Totally different things.
The text breaks this down into inbound versus outbound innovation. Now, obviously, you listening probably know what basic tech scouting is, but what Römer is getting at feels a lot more mechanical. How do these two modes actually operate on a day-to-day basis?
So think of the boundary of your company as like a semi-permeable membrane rather than a solid brick wall.
Okay.
Inbound open innovation is the deliberate process of bringing the outside in. And this isn't just passively reading industry news, right?
Mm.
It is actively scouting and adopting external solutions to inject speed into your own development roadmap.
So what does that look like practically?
You are systematically looking at universities, startup ecosystems, independent research centers,
Oh.
and you're adopting their patented materials, their algorithms, or their consumer insights to make your own product better and faster.
But the real friction there isn't just finding the startup, though, is it? It's the integration.
Oh, absolutely.
Because instead of spending 5 years researching a new material internally, you find a university that just patented it, but then you still have to figure out how to mechanically bring their academic research into your commercial manufacturing process.
Right, and that integration is where most companies stumble, which we will definitely get into when we talk about the operational models.
Yeah.
But remember, that membrane goes both ways.
Right, the outbound side.
Exactly. Outbound open innovation is about looking at the cutting room floor of your own R&D. You look at the intellectual property, the algorithms, or maybe the side projects your teams have developed, and you realize, hey, these might generate more value outside our core business.
Right, like those brilliant projects that just didn't quite fit the quarterly product line. Instead of just letting them collect dust on a server somewhere, you monetize them.
Precisely. You license those assets out to other industries, or you spin them off into separate agile startups, or you co-develop them with a strategic partner. You are commercializing your internal IP so it creates revenue and learning out in the broader ecosystem.
You're turning a sunk R&D cost into a brand new revenue stream.
Exactly.
So, smoothly transitioning here, if you're shopping and selling at this global farmers market, how do you actually execute this without it devolving into complete chaos?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Because how do you avoid legal nightmares? How do you prevent your proprietary data from just bleeding out to competitors? Or, avoid buying a startup's tech that fundamentally clashes with your own? You need some kind of structure.
You definitely do. You don't just throw open the doors and hope for the best. You have to choose a highly specific structural framework. And the source actually provides 4 distinct collaboration models that dictate these rules of engagement.
Let's go through them.
The first is the outside-in model. And this operationalizes that inbound concept we just discussed. It's heavily focused on structured tech scouting and gathering real customer insights.
So like running global challenges?
Yeah, exactly. You might run global challenges or set up structured pilot programs with startups to inject promising tech into your ecosystem, but with very clear boundaries.
And the reverse of that would be the inside-out approach.
Right.
The text makes a really great point here about focus, too. Turning non-core assets into revenue actually frees up your internal teams, because when you spin off a secondary project, your core engineers can return to what they do best, right? While an external team takes on the risk of scaling the side project.
That's a huge benefit. Then we get into the messy middle, which is the coupled models.
A messy middle, I like that.
It really is, because this involves deep co-development and alliances. Typically, this takes the form of joint ventures, where 2 or more entities pool their resources to share the, frankly, astronomical costs of development.
But the friction there must be intense.
It is. To make a coupled model work without ending up in court, the text stresses that you must align your milestones, your governance structures, and your IP ownership terms before a single line of code is ever written.
Because if Company A and Company B build something amazing together, and they haven't decided who actually owns the patent...
Oh, the product just dies in litigation.
Right. You have to map the divorce before the marriage.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Which is why the 4th model is often the most dynamic. It's called collaborative networks. And this relies on using platforms and maker communities to pool ideas at scale, rather than a traditional one-to-one corporate partnership.
And the real-world evidence the text provides for this is just staggering. Take the Lego Ideas platform, for example.
Oh, that's a brilliant one.
It is such a brilliant mechanism. The fans design the sets, the community votes on them, and then Lego only manufactures the winners, right? And they share a percentage of the profits with the original designer.
It's so smart.
If you look at the underlying mechanics of that, Lego is basically shifting the entire cost of market validation right onto the consumer base. Before they mold a single plastic brick, they already know exactly how much demand exists for that specific set.
Yeah, they've effectively crowdsourced their entire R&D department. And the text also highlights NASA tapping into the public to solve complex aerospace mathematics.
Which is wild.
It is. Plus P&G's Connect Plus Develop program and GE First Build. In the case of P&G, they actually faced really stagnant internal R&D. So they use this network model to establish a portal where external innovators, retirees, and just independent scientists could submit patents and solutions directly to P&G's internal problems.
And these are not just PR stunts either.
Not at all. These are highly structured ecosystems producing sustained, measurable value for massive corporations.
But, okay, managing that kind of scale introduces a whole new logistical nightmare. You cannot manage a global network of thousands of engineering submissions, legal agreements, and technical specs with, like, sticky notes on a whiteboard.
No, definitely not.
You need serious infrastructure. And that brings us to the software engine driving this entire trend, because Römer outlines 3 critical categories of software platforms you absolutely need to make this process repeatable.
Yeah, the software is really the only way to separate the signal from the noise here. So the first category is idea management software. And we're not just talking about a digital suggestion box.
Right, it's way more advanced.
It is a platform that captures submissions from employees, partners, and customers. And importantly, it triages those ideas using transparent, automated criteria.
So instead of some executive manually reading 1,000 emails, the software uses weighted scoring based on strategic KPIs.
Exactly.
If an idea doesn't meet the baseline for cost feasibility or strategic fit, it's just automatically filtered out. And the winning ideas are routed directly to funded development with assigned project owners.
Spot on. The second category is technology scouting tools. And these operationalize your external search. These tools pull in massive, unstructured data sets. They track signals from academic conferences, they monitor global patent filings, they analyze startup ecosystems.
So they're gathering all this raw data.
Right. And they ingest all these signals to build a heat map. This allows you to score emerging technologies and record every single partner interaction. It basically makes the global market visible and comparable.
So you aren't just sitting around waiting for a startup to knock on your door with a pitch deck. You have a systemic radar tracking the heartbeat of your industry, like spotting the patent for a new battery technology the very week it's filed by a university in another country.
Exactly. You see it as it happens. And the third category bridges the gap: trend management software. This involves monitoring market forecasts and consumer shifts to turn vague, future-looking trends into prioritized bets for your product roadmap.
And that plugs right into your workflow, right?
Yeah, it integrates directly with your project management tools. As the source beautifully puts it, the ultimate goal of all 3 systems combined is to centralize communication and analytics, so ideas become measurable projects, not lost notes.
Measurable projects, not lost nodes. I mean, how many billion-dollar ideas have died in a neglected email thread just because there was no workflow to capture them?
Probably more than we want to know.
Seriously. So we have the mechanical models and we have the software stack to run them. But here's where it gets really interesting. And I actually have to push back a little on the core premise here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Inviting startups into your process, opening up your APIs, sharing your proprietary data, doesn't giving away your intellectual property sound incredibly risky? You are essentially handing the blueprint of your castle to the very people trying to disrupt you.
Look, the concern is entirely valid. And it is the primary reason legacy companies hesitate. It fundamentally changes how you protect and control knowledge. But we really have to look at the strategic reality of the market. The risk of keeping your knowledge siloed and becoming obsolete is mathematically much higher than the risk of sharing it. The rewards for taking this managed, calculated risk are highly concrete.
Okay, walk me through those rewards then. Why should a business take that leap of faith?
Well, the primary reward is a drastically faster time to market. When you run collaborative projects, you are working in parallel rather than in sequence. You share the heavy lifting, allowing your products to reach the consumer sooner.
That makes sense.
Second is a massive reduction in R&D costs. By sharing resources, running joint pilots, and using open platforms, you are lowering your internal spend and spreading the financial risk. If a co-developed project fails, you only absorb a fraction of the cost rather than taking a total loss.
And third, I'd imagine you gain access to a cognitive diversity that simply doesn't exist on your own payroll. I mean, you could have the smartest 1,000 engineers in the world, but there are millions of engineers outside your building.
Precisely. But, the text doesn't gloss over the friction of achieving this. It directly addresses the pushback.
What are the main challenges?
The first major challenge is exactly what you brought up: IP protection and knowledge control. You cannot just hand over your source code. You have to manage inbound and outbound licensing with incredibly clear, modular contracts.
Right.
The second challenge is partner coordination across organizational boundaries. You're dealing with different corporate timelines, different incentives, and very different risk appetites.
A startup moves way faster than a Fortune 500 company.
Exactly. So you have to define explicit roles, decision rights, and stage gates to maintain momentum when things get difficult.
But the third challenge, and this is a favorite insight of mine from the text, is the one that really dictates success or failure. And it has nothing to do with software or contracts. It's the internal culture change.
Oh, absolutely.
The text highlights this massive psychological shift that companies must make, moving from a not invented here mindset to a proudly found elsewhere mentality. Let's really analyze that, because the ego of engineering and leadership teams has ruined countless companies.
It really has.
If your internal R&D team prides itself on building everything from scratch, they are going to view an external startup solution as a threat to their job security.
And that cultural pivot is the hardest part of the entire roadmap. If your internal teams feel threatened by outside innovation, they will passively sabotage the integration process.
Oh, they'll find every technical excuse for why the external solution won't work.
Exactly. So leadership has to physically restructure incentive programs. You have to financially and publicly reward your teams for efficiently integrating a great solution found outside the building rather than punishing them for not inventing it themselves.
You have to make them feel like brilliant curators rather than failed inventors.
That's a great way to frame it.
Mm-hmm.
And structurally, the source emphasizes another strategic insight to protect you during this psychological shift.
So,
You must embed your legal team early.
oh yeah, legal cannot just be the department of no that you consult at the very end of the process.
Because when legal is brought in at the end, they look at the external partnership, see massive undefined risk, and they just shut it down, killing months of momentum.
Right.
The source is crystal clear on this. You align IP ownership, data rights, and contracts with your business model from day one. By embedding legal early, they can create secure data sandboxes.
What does that mean practically?
It allows external startups to test their algorithms against synthetic corporate data without ever accessing real customer information. It allows you to run technical reviews and pilot technology at high speed without exposing the core company to unnecessary risk.
Okay, so you listening are probably absorbing all of this and thinking, my organization needs to adapt. We need to stop building the wheel from scratch and start looking outward. How do you actually apply this tomorrow? The concept is huge. What is the practical playbook for launching and scaling an open innovation program without just overwhelming the company?
Well, the source lays out a very rigorous step-by-step roadmap for this. And the cardinal rule is, you don't try to rewire the entire corporate motherboard on day one.
Keep it manageable.
Right. You start by defining a narrow set of clear, measurable goals, so the program delivers immediate business value. You begin with a short plan, and this plan must name the specific desired outcomes, the exact selection criteria for external ideas, and explicitly state who the internal decision makers are.
So transparency right out of the gate. External partners and internal employees need to know exactly what problems the company is trying to solve. Otherwise, your intake funnel just fills up with thousands of irrelevant suggestions.
Exactly. Once those boundaries are set, you build a simple 5-step process map. Intake, triage, validation, pilot, and scale.
Nice and structured.
Very. And you attach specific milestones to each of those steps. To actually get the ideas flowing into the intake phase, the text suggests running highly targeted initiatives. You don't just put up a generic web form. You host specific hackathons or global challenges designed to attract solutions that directly fit the gaps in your current product roadmap.
But eventually, the executive board is going to come knocking. They are going to ask for the ROI on these hackathons and startup pilot programs. Because innovation can be a very nebulous word. How do you rigorously measure the impact so the program doesn't just get its budget cut?
You have to rely on hard analytics, not just enthusiasm.
Right.
The text outlines a compact 3-part scorecard that leaders need to see to justify the ongoing investment. First, you track the funnel metrics. That means idea volume, idea quality based on your strategic criteria, implementation rate, and time to market benchmarks.
So it's not just about generating 1,000 ideas.
No, it's measuring how quickly a vetted idea moves from intake to a shipped product.
And you benchmark that time to market so you can see exactly where the friction is. Because if it takes 2 weeks to find a startup but 6 months to approve the pilot, you know your legal or procurement process is the real bottleneck.
Exactly. Now, the second area on the scorecard is the cold, hard financials. You must quantify the R&D cost savings, the new revenue generated by external products, and the overall ROI of the program. Leaders need to see clear dollar values tied to specific collaborative pilots.
What's the third area?
The third area is platform engagement.
Meaning you are tracking how efficiently people are actually using the scouting and trend management software we talked about earlier.
Right. You are monitoring submission frequency, review cycle times, and the diversity of the contributors. Because if it takes your internal team 90 days to review an external submission, agile startups are just going to walk away and partner with your competitor instead.
You lose the talent.
Yeah. You have to track satisfaction to ensure partners stay engaged. As the text summarizes this entire phase, the golden rule is to measure what matters and iterate the measurement itself.
Iterate the measurement itself. I love that. So you're not just iterating the product, you are constantly upgrading the criteria by which you evaluate success. That is an incredibly dynamic, almost biological way to run a business.
It really is.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've explored the inevitable death of the isolated R&D lab, the distinct mechanical models of external collaboration, the software stack that makes it manageable, and the stripped financial scorecards needed to prove it actually works.
Pulling all of it together into a forward-looking perspective, the ultimate takeaway from Römer's roadmap is that open innovation is not just a temporary tactic. It is a fundamental shift in corporate strategy.
Yeah.
By deliberately combining your internal expertise with the friction and the brilliance of the outside world, you build an organization capable of learning faster than the market changes. You start with small, focused pilots, measure the concrete outcomes, and then you scale the frameworks that prove to be repeatable.
It's about designing an ecosystem rather than just designing a product. And that leaves me with a final provocative thought for you to mull over. If we project this trend forward and every smart company eventually adopts an open innovation model, the ultimate competitive advantage fundamentally shifts. The winner in the future economy won't be the company who invents the most in their own isolated lab. The winner will be the company who integrates the best from the global market. Basically, the best curator wins.
Wow. Yeah, it perfectly captures the transition from hoarding knowledge to orchestrating it.
Thank you for tuning in to the SmartKeys podcast. We highly encourage you to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a deep dive like this one. And if you want to explore the specific collaboration models, the software tools, and that comprehensive scorecard we discussed today, be sure to read Felix Römer's full article. You can find the link right down in the show notes. Until next time, keep looking beyond your own walls.